Welcome to Growthology. This is our first episode of our new podcast. I am so excited to start this. Have been on podcasts myself and have led a few others, but this one has me extremely excited. And I am excited to welcome our first guest, my esteemed business partner and the Chief Strategy Officer of Digital Exhaust, Tracy.
Hey,
Welcome.
Carlos.
Welcome to Growthology, our very first episode. This is cool.
So excited. I mean, this is kind of, you know me, I don't like to be on this side of cameras,
Right.
But I'll do anything for you, Carlos.
Well, I appreciate that. And this is why we work so well together, because as you know, I have no problem being the center of attention. So this works out pretty well. So before we get into B2B marketing, sales, customer service, et cetera, growth, all of that stuff. If you weren't doing this, if you weren't in the B2B ecosystem, what would you do?
Yeah, that's such a big question because this is the only thing I've ever done my whole life, right? B2B marketing. I've always been here. I love it. It's fun to stay on the cutting edge of things. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. I play guitar a little bit. Maybe a rock star. Who knows?
Yeah, but you don't like being up front.
Well, that's a good point. Maybe I'd just be a bass player, right?
There you go.
Unassuming, quiet bass player.
There you go. Unless you're in Keith Urban's band, because he has his band members all do a song in his concert, and all of those guys and ladies could go do their own thing. So be careful what you wish for. So you may be out front more than you would like.
So I've done a pretty good job of staying behind, so no problem.
Right. Well, this is a show about growth, but before we get into even that, again, from your perspective, talk to me about, you and I have had a lot of discussions. Why the podcast? What is our goal here? I mean, when we started Digital Exhaust, we said we don't need another demand and marketing automation agency. Do we need another podcast? What's going to be different about this one?
Podcast, that's a good question. I'd like to hear your side and your take on this as well. But I think the big thing for me, and we've talked about this, is this world of B2B marketing seems to never change. And the things that change are really just how we name different activities or emotions, right? But it seems like that we're all kind of doing the same thing we did 20 years ago. And what I'm hoping that we can accomplish through this podcast is to really inspire people to think outside of the box and understand that there are so many creative ways to go about B2B marketing. And it doesn't need to be this cut and paste and copy what someone else is doing. You can actually do a lot of really great things just by, being a little more creative, thinking about, I think a lot about how B2B has really taken on this consumer pace, this cadence. B2B buyers are acting more and more like consumers than they ever have before. And I think this represents a really great opportunity for marketers to kind of step outside of what's always been done and to do something new. And those are the things I'd like to discover and talk about, and just listen to, the guests that you bring onto your show and hear what they have to say about all of this as well.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And you hit on something that I know for me, I've said in our meetings, it makes my teeth hurt when I see that we are talking about the same things that, as you mentioned, we talked about 20 years ago. So I read a research report, and it's still marketing and sales alignment, and volume of leads, and do you gate content or not content? And I think the discussion has to be bigger than that. I think, and you also talked about the idea of we're doing, quote, new things. We're just slapping new names on stuff that's been done and we're calling it new. So how much of that is adding confusion to the job of a CMO or even a director of marketing, where really right now what CEOs and CFOs are saying is, help me create revenue? How much confusion are vendors and other groups adding by saying, well, now it's everything new. In reality, it's the same stuff we've been talking about for the last 25 years.
Yeah, I think that confusion is a reality, and it really hinders growth. I mean, you think about why there might be some distrust from the executive, like the C-suite, into the marketing department is, we have these really great plans, and we talk about how we're going to change how we approach our go-to-market activities, and we, make a big hoopla around it. And we go out and we never really quite execute it to the extent that needs to happen for it to be successful. And then the C-suite kind of loses confidence. Next thing you know, there's a next big thing that marketing is going to do. And I think sometimes the C-suite will catch wind of it and hear something about it, and they'll say, well, are we doing this? So I do think it creates a lot of confusion. And it also, I think, impairs the confidence and kind of eats away at the confidence that the CEO and that leadership team, the sales leadership team, has for marketing.
I don't disagree. So my question is, I want to get on the growth thing in a minute. With what you just said, especially when you have an executive team, and we've seen this before, a CEO says, oh, hey, CMO or VP of marketing, are we doing this, right? Because everybody else is doing it. What does a CMO do to make sure that they're staying in a lane, they're consistently driving corporate growth, they're a great partner with sales and customer success when they have all of these different voices, internal and external, saying, are we doing this? We've got to do this. If you're not doing this, you're going to be left behind. It's madness. So how does the CMO balance that and make sure that they're staying the course?
Well, and I think this is where, we create confusion by changing the names of what we call different motions or activities. In a lot of ways, if a CMO would just answer that question with, well, we are doing all of these things, and be able to represent that in a way that makes sense to those leaders, I think, that's the best way to address some of these desires. I mean, the one thing that I see a lot of is that sales organizations, and even kind of that C-suite leadership team, they're very reactive. When they hear things, they don't know a lot about what's going on. They have probably very little experience in the marketing space itself. And so they have just an honest question. Are we doing this? It sounds like everyone's doing it. Are we doing it? And it's something that I think if CMOs really understand what it is they're executing, they would be able to address that question straight up. A lot of times, yes, we are doing it. It may not be called the same thing. But I'm curious what you think about that, because I think this is a big issue that a lot of times creates misalignment, with those business objectives.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think I'm probably a little bit more, I don't know, emotional about it. It drives me crazy. I mean, I see right now the number of bound things. I saw a post the other day that, outbound isn't bad as long as it's soft bound and not cold bound. And now it's all bound and near bound. And I'm like, what are we talking about? We are literally creating these buzzwords and these terms as all of this is new. ABM is a great example. I mean, sales organizations have been going after target accounts and buying groups for eons, and that marketing gets hold of this, and now it's, ABM, like it's this holy grail, this new thing that we have to do. And don't get me wrong, I mean, when it's done right, it can have an incredible impact on an organization, and it actually is better for your customers.
Yeah,
we fall into these things in this shiny object syndrome where it's the latest trend, the latest technology. Got to have Gen AI. We got to do all these things. my personal opinion, you could tell got pretty strong opinions. Let's make growth simple. How about that? And
Yeah,
maybe
I love that, Carlos.
start with our customer. Let's just start with who are our customers? How do they buy? How do they interact? How do they feel? Because we don't sell to leads and accounts, we sell to people. And what do they need far more than what do we want to say?
Yeah, totally agree with that. I think, a lot of times we create complexity where it doesn't need to be, right?
Right.
And I think about this idea again of account-based marketing. I think it is a very effective way of reaching your customers. And it's a very effective growth mechanism that you can deploy. But one thing, that happens quite often is these strategies aren't fully dependent upon just the marketing department. If it was just the marketing department with ABM, you'd probably see, a lot more conversions and things like that. But really, ABM, what a lot of people don't understand is it's a partnership across your functional organization where it may be kicked off by a conversation between sales and marketing. Objectives and goals are set by sales. Marketing steps in and puts together a strategy, for how to go after these named accounts. And then there is a distribution of responsibility across multiple teams. It could be even, extending into customer success team. And everyone has to play a role. It's like it's a team sport at that point, not just a marketing functional effort. And so, I think by simplifying and really finding, what is our organization able to do? What are we prepared to do? And then just getting rid of all of the rest and just making it really easy to go out and understand your customers, your buyers, and engage with them effectively. I think that's one of the biggest challenges I see with our marketers today.
Yeah, we don't know customers. And I still hear we're not allowed to talk to customers. They're sales customers. I'm like, then get out of that organization, right? Why are you there? They're your customers just as much as they are sales. You were talking about the simplicity and the organizational pull. I talked to a company once where they wanted to pilot ABM. They started with one account, just one. And you hear that and you're like, that's insane. But because of what you just described, they knew, yes, it's marketing, it's sales, it is product that was going to be involved, customer success as well. Once they landed the customer, they said, before we go and try to do this mass target, this one-to-one personalization across a myriad of accounts, let's start with one.
Mm-hmm.
And then they proved the model. They won the account. And then they said, okay, now let's take all of these learnings and apply it to a larger group. And I thought that was so brilliant that the executive team was like, yeah, we're okay with that. Let's start small, let's start simple, and then learn from that and apply it so we can get the exponential return.
Yeah, and what's really great about those, then when you go to your second wave and you've added a few more accounts, you can measure or you can monitor how it's being executed and really understand, are we executing this in the same way as we did the one that we were piloting and that we were successful with, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, totally, I agree with that approach. Absolutely.
So one of the other things you mentioned was growth. And I'm curious from your perspective, every company wants to grow. Everybody is, CEOs are now demanding more growth coming from marketing. How do you define growth? Is it all about revenue? Is there more to that marketing and sales organizations should be looking at? And maybe people listening are going to be like, that's an insane question. But I've spent a lot of time thinking about that. I know you and I have spent time talking about this whole idea of growth. So I'd love for you to share some of those conversations and your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think growth is, I guess, fundamentally and primarily, it is about revenue, right? But we also know that if organizations who are responsible for generating that revenue if they're not constantly innovating and thinking of new ways to engage and engage in a meaningful manner, then they're going to lose momentum and lose traction. And then they're the only way for an organization or individuals in an organization to understand how to be better at what they're doing is by personal growth or professional growth, right? Am I doing my job the way that it should be done? Am I adding creativity that's going to support maybe a nuance that, we haven't exposed yet? So I look at growth primarily as, yeah, it is the function of achieving that revenue objective. But in order to do that, you've always got to be improving. And you got to be improving in the ways that you execute. You got to be improving in the ways you come up with these creative ideas and in approaching customers. So to me, growth, though the ultimate growth is revenue, the ultimate definition, I guess, of growth is revenue. The only thing that leads to that is by ongoing improvement by every individual associated to that revenue engine.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And this was years ago, did some research on the average spent on marketing skills training per year, and it was $1,000. So the average and again, this was years ago, so it might have changed. I don't think it's changed a whole lot. And there are a myriad of sales trainings out there to help salespeople do their jobs better. And I know there's groups that, we are fans of, Content Marketing Institute, Marketing Profs, et cetera, that really try to help marketers obtain these skills. But I love how you brought together the idea of getting better at our roles and our skills. And now we know there's so much more coming at a marketer today that they have to adapt to, far more than there was 20 years ago, or 30 years ago when I started, a little bit longer when you started. But I always like to remind you that. Yeah, exactly. But I love that if we can do this well, imagine what it does for our companies.
Yeah. And so then you think about some of that from an execution perspective. And if you don't have your act together in terms of how you're measuring your improvement, how are you going to ever know, what triggered that growth? So, I think that as, unfortunately, where some of us marketers are also our worst enemies in terms of positioning ourselves in poorly with the organization. It used to be, yeah, I was one of the original marketers of the earth, so I know I'm very old. And back then it was all about coffee mugs and t-shirts, right? And if you do that right, you're praised. Well, that isn't marketing anymore. Marketing is a science and an art, and it's data and it's systems, and there's so much complexity to it. And you brought up this idea, this thought about, sales and how there's so much investment made in improving a salesperson and their capabilities or skill sets and all that, and very little is spent on marketing. I totally agree with that. And I don't understand why organizations don't see this as an important area of investment. When you think about this research that Sixth Sense just put out, I love it.
Yeah,
kind of going through it and understanding that the buyer will not engage until they're ready to engage, and they're going to want to make the first contact.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? That means salespeople are not a part of this discussion. And that discussion is everything needed to put your organization on the short list for that decision. So doesn't that kind of mean that you've got to step up in your marketing, get much, much better at positioning your organization without a human being trying to force a conversation? And that is where the investment needs to happen.
Yeah, but Tracy, once you download my ebook, I'm supposed to call you and get you on a demo for 30 minutes. And if you say yes, I will give you a $5 Starbucks gift card. I mean, talk about value, my friend. You can't say no to that, all because you downloaded an ebook. Never mind, why are we putting forms and obstacles in front of a buyer, but we're still dealing with that crap.
Yeah. Still.
So you brought out a point. First of all, I loved Six Senses survey as well. A little frustrated that I just can't download it, that I have to go all over your website, Six Sense, to look at this. So if anybody from Six Sense is listening, awesome study, great research. I'm an old-fashioned guy. Just let me download the damn thing. Thank you. However, you talked about that. I think it was like 79% of the journey is incognito mode or whatever, in dark mode. And then you said, from a sales perspective, would love your take. My view is people say, well, sales is now irrelevant. My take is sales now has to adapt and change and figure out how to become part of that 79%, much like marketing is figuring out, where instead of now, I got to sell you, I become part of the conversation. I become a subject matter expert, not just on my product and my brand, but on what's happening in the industry. Can I talk about what's happening and what customers should be thinking about without mentioning my product or my brand?
Yeah.
So I love your take on that is, and feel free to disagree, but I think that's a new role that salespeople need to master, because if I can do that well and help you as a customer or a buyer make an informed decision, the likelihood that when you're ready to make a decision or create that shortlist that you turn to me as one of those vendors, I would think is pretty high.
Yeah. I liken this to, this idea of transforming sales to be, to work a little differently in lieu of, that they're being locked out of conversations until the buyer's ready to buy, which means you may never get a seat at the table.
Right.
But here's the comparison I think about quite a bit. Look at the influencer world in the consumer side, right? There are all these influencers. What are they selling, or are they creating content? They are creating content, right? And I don't think I know a salesperson, or I haven't met a salesperson that is just creating content and just putting this content just nonstop out online. And it's got to be quality, right? So influencers who don't do a really good job at quality content, they don't really get recognized. They don't become the influencer that they want to become. But I feel like that, like BDRs, salespeople, they should become influencers. They should be creating content. They should be aligned with marketing. Let marketing support them with some of the creative resources and things like that, maybe the tools, but they should become B2B influencers. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I love seeing, the example I use all the time is Jill Raleigh. Jill, anybody who's been in B2B knows Jill was at Eloqua. She was at Marketo. She's now at Nearbound. We'll get Jill on the show. We'll talk about this whole bound nonsense. But I have great respect for Jill. I remember when we first started, when I left the software world to start my first agency, we were exclusive with a vendor that was a competitor to Eloqua. I don't know how long we were into this, and all of a sudden my phone rings, or I get an email. I don't remember. I end up talking to Jill, and I remember thinking she's going to just push Eloqua. She's going to tell me I've got to be a partner, do all these things. We talked for 45 minutes. And I swear to you, not once did Eloqua leave her lips. We talked about the industry. We talked about what they were seeing. We talked about customers. We talked about all the challenges that we're trying to address. It was an awesome conversation. It wasn't long after that where I said, you know what? We're no longer going to be exclusive. We should be talking to Eloqua. Jill never sold me, but it was that conversation that I always go back to and say, Jill was, and the thing I love about her, she's a subject matter expert in whatever she throws herself into. She knows the space. She knows the problem. She knows the customers. This is what we have to be as salespeople, especially if we're going to drive growth, because to your point and the survey, B2B buyers, B2B customers are so much more savvy and they don't need salespeople to guide them on this journey. They're going to make this decision on their own. End of story.
Totally agree with that, Carlos.
Yeah, I think that's something that and I love that you're saying marketing can support them and collaborate to make that happen.
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, that's all right. So just thinking through all of this, we're one of the things we've said with the podcast is we want every episode to be under 35 minutes. So we've got about 10 minutes left. If hopefully we get a lot of different people in a lot of different roles listening to this. So whether you're a CMO or even just a marketing manager, or you say, all right, I agree. There's enough already on our plates than in addition to get this wildly confusing stuff. And if you spend any time on LinkedIn, you almost work yourself into a frenzy thinking, I am missing the boat. What should they do as a first step? What is one thing they can do, or maybe two things to say, I'm in this role. I know I'm not crazy, but my CEO, my CFO, my head of sales, they want growth, and marketing has to play a role in that, or else my replacement will find a way to do it. What are one or two things they can do like right now after they listen to this to make that happen?
Great question. You put me on the spot because I'm a bit, the whole right now is the part that kind of got me, because
Fair.
when I think about
marketing's a light switch, Tracy. You push send on the campaign. Where are the leads? Come on. Don't you know that?
That's right. That's right.
So I take back right now. I've been my hand has been slapped.
Okay. To answer your question, I think, where my mind really lands, you talk about a little bit about attribution. It's a bit of it's a challenge sometimes to be able to have that conversation with the sales organization, because a lot of times they feel threatened when marketing wants a little bit of credit for the work that they're doing, right? But there needs to come a point where the sales organization and the marketing organization can talk about attribution without getting upset, and really define what is needed in order for sales to really grow and achieve their objectives. With that understanding, marketing needs to be able to put together the data that will help represent what the baseline is, and then be able to test these activities, test the work that they're doing, and be able to really demonstrate the attribution, or what was the contribution that the marketing people made in order to achieve these conversions, right? And it should not be a threatening conversation. And it seems like just about every time I've tried to have this with, when I was in the client side, or even as an agency guy, that conversation is always a hard one. I don't know why it has to be hard. It's really, how can we help you? How can we help the business?
Right.
So let's figure out, what marketing needs to do to be able to support you. And then let's measure it, and let's test it, and let's improve. Let's find ways of improving.
So I have a theory on why it's such a hard conversation. And again, it's a theory, but I think by and large, we are a victim a little bit of our legacy as marketers, where most marketing departments have not really done a whole lot to demonstrate value to their organizations in terms of growth, especially to a sales organization. So we created, 1,500 MQLs this quarter. Well, that's really interesting because none of them made the pipeline, or less than 3% made pipeline. So I think some of those legacy things that we have created, salespeople look at it and go, here it is. It's like what you said at the beginning of the conversation, just another thing, another fad, another this. Shared metrics. Why not put your marketing people on a commission plan?
There you go.
Right? Holy cow, that would change some things. So now
that would force attribution too, right?
Right. Oh, we could have a whole conversation on attribution. Something you and I haven't really talked about. I feel like some of these conversations, even though we've known each other for like 12 years, I feel like we're an old married couple. You'll say something and I'm like, we've never talked about that. So I don't know. Maybe we need to have you back on to talk about attribution, because I have, shocker, some pretty strong opinions about attribution. But all that to say, all joking aside, I do think that we have not done ourselves any favors in the past. So we have to figure out, and I think we do well to just own that and just say, hey, look, and I tell the story at McAfee, and we're coming towards the end, so I'll make it quick. My first day there, I sat down next to the VP of sales and he said, marketing's never done anything for me, and no offense, but I don't expect you to do anything different. So other than taking my plate and going to the marketing table at sales kickoff, I did some digging, and he was right. So I called him and said, hey, on behalf of everybody who worked with you in the past in a marketing role, I want to apologize. I said, you were right. I said, so what can we do to fix it? And it was like an immediate switch where he was like, nobody has ever, and again, I wasn't some like seasoned marketer. I was not long into my career, but I knew enough to say, I don't think he's just trying to be a jerk. I think he's trying to send me a message of, hey, you're here, but we need help. Yep. And we had a fantastic relationship in those 3 years that we worked together. And it started with, he was right. I don't need to take offense to that, right? So let me help. And then I would say, help me help you.
Yep.
Give me the stuff I need. Let's report on this stuff. And we got through that. Well, that wasn't a lead that marketing generated. At the end of the day, it's revenue for everybody. So, right, let's not get so crazy over who's going to get credit, so long as marketing can show what we're returning to the organization based on the investment they gave us.
Yep. And you established a really good point there, Carlos. At the end of the day, it's all about communication, right? It's about being able to have these conversations with your peers across, feels kind of like this political aisle, right? You got marketers and sales, and it's like, why is it that we have such a hard time aligning? I mean, that's another issue that I can't wait to hear how some of your guests have addressed this, but the sales marketing alignment's been an issue since the beginning of time. And it's about what you just said. It's about communication, accepting responsibility, and working together to move forward.
Yeah, I feel like with the alignment thing, it's honestly, I still can't believe we're talking about it. It drives me crazy. It's the same old. We've probably killed 6 rainforests with the number of books and papers that have been written about it. Maybe it's me. I don't think it's that hard. I really don't. I don't think it's that difficult. And I don't understand why it's still a thing, but it is.
Yeah, it is.
So, well, anyway, this has been a great conversation. You are officially our first guest. Nobody can ever take that away from you. So I don't have a prize or a sticker or anything. I still owe you $7 from our October golf match.
Yeah.
It'd probably be easier if I had Venmo, but I don't. So I will somehow get that to you. It still weighs heavy on my heart and my soul.
You can buy me a beer the next time we're spending time in the same.
And truth be told, you were kind. I think you were feel bad for me, and you just were like, I'll lose this hole and let him catch up.
Yeah, you'd think. No, I'm not that good.
Well, hey, my friend, great conversation. All of Tracy's details will be in the show notes, and we will have him back on to dive deeper into growth, and we will definitely be talking about attribution. So until next time, thank you for listening to the Growthology podcast, and we wish you all a wonderful day. And if you need anything from us, you know how to reach us.